The Magic Show is brought to you by StarCityGames.com, and check this out. For each Morningtide booster box or complete set that you pre-order from StarCityGames.com, you'll get one free entry into a drawing for an unlimited Black Lotus. That's right, folks. One lucky customer is going to win an unlimited Black Lotus, and the more Morningtide you pre-order from Star City, the greater your chances of winning. So what are you waiting for? Visit StarCityGames.com and pre-order Morningtide today.
Hi, I'm Tom Lapelli, and welcome to The Magic Show.
Hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Magic Show. This week we're going to take a look at my top 10 articles of the year, recap Flores' wacky theorems, and we ride the wave of an incredible outbreak of new Morningtide spoilers. You ready for some kick-ass 2007 goodness to go along with some 2008 hype? Let's go! 2007, man, what a year. It's the year in which the Magic Show really came into its own, the year the show went from a few funny slides and some wonky audio to a full entertainment experience. This came from my trial and error and your never-ending support. But this section isn't about me, it's about the top 10 articles by other people. We can recap our favorite moments some other time. So with no further ado, let's get started. At number 10, there's Creating a Fearless Magic Inventory by Sam Stoddard. In this article, Sam does what no one thought possible. He describes, in detail, his mistakes. He picks apart his game, his playstyle, his failures. He tries to both explain and rectify his shortcomings through what I describe as a therapeutic exercise in the loves and losses of a modern Magic player. Sam is no, quote, King Donk, as some would describe yours truly. This man has won PTQs, been to the Pro Tour, and then lost the spark. So how did Sam get his groove back? You'll have to read it to find out. Number 9 is 3 Ways to Think Faster by Tom Lapelli. In his first article as a featured writer for Star City Games, Tom Lapelli knocks it out of the park as he gives you some incredibly easy to use and insightful information. With this article, you'll learn how to think ahead, think generally, and think at the right time. With these 3 concepts as well as easy to follow examples, Tom shows us how to apply this to our actual games. Here's a choice quote. Quote, if you have a ponder in your hand and you have plenty of mana, you should just cast the ponder before you do any other kinds of pondering. You'll see new cards and that will inform all of the thinking you do after that. Time spent thinking before doing something that gives you more information can be wasted, which we want to avoid. Number 8 is 5 Ways to Fix Green by Ben Blywis. In this article from February, Ben shows us not only how right he can be, but how forward-thinking he really is. Take a look at the things he outlined in this article. Keyword the, quote, web ability that we now know as Reach. Keyword untargetability that we now know as Shroud. Keyword the poison ability that we now know as Poisonous. This last point is why Ben made the list this year. Take a look at a subtle point on poison cards that hasn't been thought about that much. Quote, with the exception of Swamp Mosquito and Time Spiral, the, quote, if any player has 10 or more poison counters, he or she loses the game is a static effect on the card and not part of the rules reminder. It would be extremely simple to just remove the rules for poison entirely and make it function similarly to arcane spells in that in and of itself, it does nothing. This would free up design space for poison while allowing every single poison card in Magic, except for the Time Spiral Swamp Mosquito, to function just as written. Now take a look at what Ben has right in this article and take a look at what he might be right about and consider this was all long before Future Sight even hit the rumor sites. Poison looks like a mechanic just aching to take over Magic playmats everywhere, and I think Ben called it right here. It's only fair to tell you I'm absolutely cuckoo. In our first installment of Flores' crazy 2000 theorems on Magic, we take a look at Trump. Trump was detailed in Flores' article titled, quote, The Big Idea, and I'm not really sure everyone got the big idea. Here's Flores' explanation of Trump. Quote, Trump is a term related to power, ultimately. Pardon the term trumping, the fundamental term given the right conditions. Resource, offensive, and defensive speed obviously remain operational, but trump, when it comes into play, is the most important element in any game that has not actually been decided. He then gives you a few examples of how you are screwed when your opponent has the trump and culminates with this, quote, today's sections outline some of the techniques that I personally try to use in order to create efficient decks. For about the last 3 years, my decks have tended to to approach tournaments with a greater share value than archetype decks, even when they play weird cards or combinations of cards. And that value comes from attacking the format from different angles than might be expected, utilizing forgotten linears, and positioning in such a way that the opponent's expected cards and strategies are the least effective wherever possible." Unquote. For those out there kicking ass in Magic tournaments utilizing forgotten linears, I salute you. Number 7 is Practice Doesn't Make Perfect by Paul Jordan. In this article, Paul details his testing strategies, methodologies, and explains how these processes can help your own testing. How often do you allow takebacks in your testing sessions? What about free mulligans? What sort of distractions do you have around you at the time? What about keeping track of life totals and plays on paper? These are all questions in which Paul gives you the right answer for testing your decks better and achieving more from your practice sessions than you normally would. Here's a choice quote. "An important nugget to remember through all of this is that, assuming you are not currently utilizing all these recommendations, the way you practice is having a negative impact on some aspect of your game. Your body and mind are keeping track of every shortcut, takeback, and rushed play, and logging it in your psyche, along with every other game you have played under the heading, quote, How to Play Magic the Gathering." Just fantastic stuff. Number 6 is I'll Take Magic Writers on Jeopardy for 200, My Experiences on America's Favorite Game Show by Dave Medish. This article isn't actually a Magic article. It's a 5-day series from the now-defunct Daily series that used to run on Star Cities every day of the week. The Daily series were stopped a week or so after this ran, and it certainly went out with a bang. Dave Medish delivers on one of the funniest, most entertaining pieces that you'll read on a Magic site, even if the series itself doesn't always pertain to Magic the Gathering. Wonderful work. Number 5 is Everyone Makes Mistakes by Steven Menendian. Steven knocks it out of the park with this article, the culmination of his article from the previous week that was just as brilliant, Understanding How We Play Magic. I chose this one as it's a bit easier to grok, and reading this article will lead you to his previous effort that was just as awesome. That said, what does this article cover? It covers complex systems and how Magic decks are just exactly that. He details how difficult it is to, quote, make optimal strategic decisions in a world of dynamic complexity. He then explains this by using examples like MIT's use of the beer distribution game, how world-class thinkers can believe in untrue conditions through inferring rather than investigation. Fantastic work at the end of 2007 from the Vintage Master.
It's only fair to tell you I'm absolutely cuckoo.
In part 2 of our rundown of Flores' wacky theorems, we talk about the strangest one, vectors. Now, vectors, as Flores describes them, really aren't vectors at all. I guess you would call them angles of attack, to borrow an oft-used phrase. But let's have Mike try to explain just what these MS Paint drawings really mean, particularly regarding this big 10 versus 3 thing here. Quote, "Look instead back to figure 2 above. 3 is zipping along at a weird angle. It's not just a quantity, but a vector. No one is aiming at 3, but 3 can knock big old 10 down because he is sneaky. He isn't going to win any pure power fights, but that's not the fight he wants. 3 is an assassin, a surgeon, an imaginative ambulance chaser, not some kind of clod with a giant mallet. No offense, 10. Now, so for those who like to pack ambulance chasers, I wish you luck with this new theorem. Let's get back to the list. Number 4 is Investment by Richard Feldman. In this article, the brilliant Richard Feldman takes us through a story about a girl. And you just know a Magic article is good when it's about a girl. Anyway, this one involves the story of how much time you invest in a deck. How long do you stick it out with Old Faithful before jumping ship to something else? When is it time to say goodbye to that old deck for the new shiny tech? Haven't you heard the story of how some Rock players just play Rock forever, changing and tweaking each set since the release of Pernicious Deed? This one involves the trials of Richard and his eyebrow-piercing girl, and details how he met his fiancée, all while teaching you good magic. Another Feldman classic. Number 3 is How to Win a PTQ by Mike Flores. Yes, I can both appreciate and make fun of the Magic writing crew, and when Michael J. does well, I am the first to cheerlead. This is a fantastic article for those wondering, quote, how it's done by the people who've been there and those who wish to improve themselves. This is why you pay to read Michael's words, and his insight into how to not screw up or bring the wrong deck to the tournament is a must-read for 2007. This is how it's done by the professionals. Number 2 is identifying and applying a game plan in Limited by Tiago Chan. I'll let Tiago speak for himself on this one. Quote, "From my experience, successful Limited players, generally speaking, are the ones who play Limited like it's constructed. This means that in Limited as well as constructed, it's possible to identify a metagame of decks and establish different game plans for playing with or against them. It's not the easiest thing to think ahead in a game of constructed, but it's even harder to do it in Limited, where most of the time we make our decisions on the fly, without thinking, simply because a certain play seems better for creating a tempo or card advantage." This article then goes on to explain how to identify archetypes in Limited, how to draft them, how to stop them, how to sideboard against them, and how you can apply this information for future formats, such as I did for my recent Drafting with Evan article, and its focus on the blue-white merfolk archetype. Tiago is one of the best writing today, and this article proves it many times over. Incredible work, man. Congratulations.
It's only fair to tell you I'm absolutely cuckoo.
Before I get to my favorite article of the year, we can't finish Flores' crazy theorems without featuring his latest, Phases. This is where he classifies decks as moving from one phase to another. Now stay with me and see if you can see a pattern here. Phase 1 is basically mana screwed, where a deck struggles to reach, quote, minimum game threshold, unquote. Phase 2 is mostly errors. Mike describes this as, quote, typically the longest part of the game. It encompasses everything between the first not being mana screwed, then actually winning. Phase 3 is Trump mode, where Mike says it's, quote, a special point that exists for some decks where that deck is actively dictating the field of battle and only a small subset of the opponent's cards still matter. Now, for those following along at home, I believe we've had these phases for a while. They're called early game, mid game, and late game. The only difference is we never describe the active decks going in and out of those states. I guess this fills that void, right? Right? Where's Orson Welles when you need him? My number 1 article of 2007 is One Game by Richard Feldman. And what I dubbed the article of the year, Richard Feldman walks us through your average game. A game in which a lesser player would simply say, I got flooded. Turns into the most dazzling investigation of how we play that I've come across in a long time. Why is it important to represent cards? What are your tells and what do you tell your opponent about your deck with the first cards you played this game? Richard tops off an incredible run of articles with what I consider my favorite of the year. This is an article that, like many others on the list, I can actually see myself going back to read and enjoying it just as much, if not more. I wouldn't call it Who's the Beatdown, but I would call it recommended reading for those who want to get better at the game. I've played with invitationalists and at the Pro Tour, and those experiences taught me a lot, but this taught me even more. Thanks a lot, Richard. And that's my top 10 for 2007. I would like to thank all of the Magic writers on the net, not just at Star City, for their inspiring work over the past year. I know it's been a good 2007 for the Magic Show, and I only hope that continues in the new year. Oh boy, it's been a busy week for the rumor lovers out there, and do I have some awesome cards to share with you. The first is the pre-release foil. You ready to see what card Timmy is going to go absolutely ape over? Let's take a look. Now that's what I call a satisfying card. It hits all the high points of a good release card. It's unbelievably exciting for Timmy. Johnny can't wait to see how big he can make his creatures, and Spike is wondering if this can actually work in a tournament setting. I personally think it's a kick-ass card for all sorts of reasons. Firstly, it rocks the kitchen table hard, and secondly, it makes those green-black elf decks even stronger. Can you imagine playing something like Guiltleaf Ambush and getting 5/5s out of it? Don't be too quick to trade these away, as I think they'll be surprising a lot of players in the coming months. But what about the release card? For Lauren, we got Shriekmaw on release day, but for Morningtide, it's something else entirely, and it's based on the Prowl mechanic. Let's take a look. Now, as far as I can tell, the Prowl mechanic is here just to get you a 5/3 for 3 mana. I don't think many players are going to get excited about the Jester's Cap on a stick here, but there are lots of possibilities. What kind of possibilities? Well, take a look at this upcoming card. Yes, also known as Momentary Blink 2.0, this guy will be insane in draft and could very well hit constructed like a ton of bricks. It may wait until Momentary Blink has left us before you see it in winning 75s, but I would definitely keep an eye on it. However, what about Wizards' own spoilers from their preview site? Check out this monster of a Kithkin. Now that's what I call a kick-ass white weenie. This is exactly the type of card Kithkin decks have been hoping for. A Collar of the Claw in the, quote, right colors. With this guy, you could do some absurd things with last week's highlighted preemptive captain and this week's graceful reprieve. But the real star this week has the strangest name. Take a look at what is bound to be a new chase rare, Marlin of the Morn Song. Now for those scratching their heads, imagine this sequence of events. End of your turn to Fairy. Untap, pass, at the end of your turn, Marlin. Tutor up whatever I need with Marlin, then use Mystical Teachings to find however many counters I need to keep Marlin alive. Good game. Holy crap, is this girl scary. While she's of course still unrealized potential at this point, I smell what the blue-black control decks can do with this girl, and it doesn't smell good at all. Speaking of chase rares, I'll close this week out with another one with an odd name. Mutavault, or maybe Mutavault. Now that's what I'm talking about, baby. This spicy meatball of a card allows you to rock a mono-white Kithkin deck with a creature that doesn't die to Wrath of God, gives a Treetop Village / Fairy Conclave-esque card to those colors who have done without one, and is the closest thing we've seen to Mishra's Factory this side of a Blinkmoth Nexus, another card that fetched $12 to $15 in its prime. Snatch these up at the pre-release because you're going to need a playset. And that's enough for this week, everybody. Next week, we'll talk more about Morningtide from those who created it and feature a magic puzzle by the puzzle master himself, Jeff Teal. Should be a lot of fun. So until next time, Magic players, this is Evan Irwin, tapping the cards so you don't have to.